Hello everyone and welcome to this new video. Today I'm talking to Eli from Flint Games. Eli, can you introduce yourself?
Hey, what's up? I'm Eli Delventhal. I am the CEO of Flint Games, which doesn't mean a lot because it's two people. So I do the programming and game design for everything we make, and the most recent game we've worked on is called BlitzKeep Unleashed. And that's on Steam Early Access right now.
And a link to that will be in the description below, of course. In a nutshell, what kind of game are we talking about?
It is described as a kind of like a RPG roguelite meets like billiards, or maybe meets like pinball, something like that. So basically what you do is you aim and then you shoot your guy, kind of like you're shooting a pool ball, and he kind of bounces around until he hits like a waypoint, and then you can shoot him again. And there's monsters and that kind of thing all throughout the level, and items and whatnot. Typical sort of RPG fare, except when you hit something, you either kill it or it kills you, and that's it. So there's no life, there's no hit points. So you have to be really like careful about planning which way you shoot your guy and what items you pick up in what order, so that you can power up and then you can eventually be stronger than the things that you hit. And that's pretty much it.
Why did you choose to make a game like this?
That is a great question. So we originally just wanted to make like a really quick 3-month game, and there was this game online that someone made that was like a quick just game jam game. It was called One Tap Quest. Go look that up. It's a pretty fun little game. And in that, you have a little guy and you click once, and then he kind of walks through this area and makes it to the end or dies. So kind of a similar sort of thing there. And we thought that it was a cool core concept and decided to expand on it. Of course, the final game for BlitzKeep is significantly different and has far more stuff and much more complexity. But that sort of little game that we played fed us the seed of an idea, and then we worked from there. And now it's been 4 years, of course, that we've worked on this game. So it's a lot different than what we first envisioned.
4 years, that's a long time.
Yes. We only work part-time, though, because we have day jobs as well. So it's like probably 10 hours a week of work for 4 years.
Are your day jobs game-related as well?
Yeah. I am the engineering director of the games team at Lumosity, and my business partner, Wouter, who does all the art, works at Big Fish Games.
Did the game become what you originally planned it to become before the start of development?
It is definitely a lot different, but I would say the spirit of it is pretty close to what we wanted. So there's a lot of things that I originally rejected adding in. For example, you can subtly change your direction as you are moving. Because it turned out that making it truly like a billiard ball where you can't touch it at all wasn't quite as satisfying or interesting. So a lot of stuff that I said I definitely would not do because I thought it would violate the spirit of the game, I finally tried out, and then it turned out to be more fun. So a lot of those sorts of changes happened over time, but the core of it is the same.
What inspired you to become an indie game developer?
I've been making games of some variety basically since I was able to draw. I started when I was really young by making board games and card games. Just have always really liked games, and then when I was 11 years old, I think, I picked up my older brother's graphing calculator, and I just started looking at the source code, because you could do that on the calculator, of some games that he had on there. And so one of the games I looked at was called Drug Wars, and it was basically like a sort of money-collecting text adventure, kind of. So it was very simple, which means I was able to kind of figure out how programming worked by just looking at the code, and then I ended up making my own game where you were kind of like a Karate Kid equivalent fighting in a tournament. And then I kind of went from there, and I've been making games ever since.
And this is your first game you bring out as Flint Games?
Sort of. Flint Games has... so we shipped the first BlitzKeep. This is BlitzKeep Unleashed. So it's both a sequel and an upgrade. The first one we worked on for 2 years, and we shipped that on iOS and Android. And then we were originally making an update for it, and it turned out that some of the features we were adding, like multiplayer especially, just made a lot more sense on PC. So we decided to spin it off actually into a new thing that was designed mainly for consoles and PC. So that's what BlitzKeep Unleashed is. So we have shipped BlitzKeep 1.0 before, and there's also a couple little Game Jam games that we shipped. One where you are a pile of poop jumping through tunnels, which is just basically Flappy Bird, except it's got liquid physics. And then another one where you are just like monster destroying planets.
For what platforms will the BlitzKeep Unleashed be released?
So it's on Steam right now, on PC, Mac, and Linux. And the idea is that if the game has enough legs, so essentially if there's enough interest on Steam and it actually is a good fit for consoles, then we'll probably try to get it on everything you can possibly think of, whoever will have us. So Steam, Xbox, PlayStation. Apple TV, we actually are planning on doing as well, even though nobody has one of those anymore. And then we might eventually bring it to mobile, depending.
What do you think is your best attitude in life?
My best attitude. I think, given that I've been making games and playing games for so long, that's kind of a central part of what I do in a lot of ways and how I function. Excuse me. And that kind of translates into I really love to bring out joy and fun in other people. That's kind of the big reason for me to make these games. And like whether it's at a party, I'll usually make some quick game for people to have a good time, or when it's a video game and people can download it. So for me, it's all about adding happiness and joy to the world, I think.
What was your day-to-day process for making this game?
So, like I said, it is a part-time endeavor. So, for me personally, I generally work on it during my commute, because I commute on a train. So that's about an hour each day, and then I do it a bit in the evenings and a bit on the weekends. Sometimes I stay up a little bit working on it, and other times I can't stand to work on it anymore, so I don't, and I play a video game instead.
Will that be the same for potential future games you will make?
Probably. I've always been of the attitude that I would love to start like a full-time studio and actually live off of the money that the game makes, but I don't want to invest a bunch of cash into that because I have other things to worry about. So if BlitzKeep or some other game that I've worked on part-time makes enough money to pay for a full-time game studio, then I would switch it up and I would do more of a regular 40-hour-a-week thing. But if it never does, then yeah, I'm happy to keep doing it on the side since I just enjoy doing it.
What were the biggest inspirations for making this game?
Well, I mentioned the one-tap quest game. That certainly was the initial seed of the idea. And then there's a lot of things that we sort of nabbed thoughts from or had a little bit of inspiration from. I think Rogue Legacy was a game that I really enjoyed the mechanic where you had sort of the family members that had different classes and stuff. So in BlitzKeep Unleashed, each time you die, you're a different character, so it generates a different name for your character, and eventually, like, I only have like 250 different names in there. So eventually, if you've played a lot, you'll start seeing that it's like Sir Stark the Third, and you start kind of having these descendants in numbers. So it's this funny way to track how long you've played and how much you've failed. And so I got that kind of influence from Rogue Legacy. And then there's various other things as well that came from different sorts of games, or just experimentation was a lot of it. Playing with playtesters, seeing what they reacted to, that kind of stuff.
What makes this game different from others?
I think the core mechanic to the game is, as far as I've seen, unique. And that makes sense because when I make games, that's the most important thing I focus on, is some kind of unique mechanic underlying it. I don't really want to make just another platformer or whatever. So the billiards-esque RPG with like one-hit death or kill is very unique as far as I've seen.
What do you think is the most interesting part of the game?
I think that the game is at its most fun when you are playing 4-player cooperative multiplayer. It really is pretty hilarious because people will die a lot. I really up the difficulty when you have that many people, and it's already a really hard game. So there's tons of deaths, but you can rescue each other like in Left 4 Dead. So basically, if you last long enough, you can go find everybody else. And then there's like, you can drag players through different doors when you didn't want to go in whatever direction. So it becomes kind of a zany couch co-op game. I think it's a lot more fun than just the single player, because the single player can at times get frustrating because it's so hard, where if you die, you're dead. In single player, you don't have a friend to help pick you up.
Poor people that don't have friends.
Yes. But, you know, the single player is also fun.
I feel sad for the people that don't have friends now.
Yeah, true. Although, to be fair, I completely designed the game for single player. So multiplayer is just kind of adding frosting on top in a lot of ways.
What game engine are you using, and why did you decide to work with this engine?
I'm using Unity like everybody else. I mainly use it because I'm familiar with it. I first started using it, I think now like 10 years ago, so really early. And I liked it then, and I like it now. The best part of it was the games I was making before Unity, I had to spend significant effort to get it on multiple platforms. And in Unity, you know, you just export and it works on whatever platform as long as you've configured everything right. So I really like that about it. Although, honestly, I'm getting kind of tired of Unity as well because it's turning extremely bloated. It's got a huge number of features I will never need or never want. And so it gets slower and slower and buggier and buggier. So I will possibly just make a game in pure JavaScript HTML5 canvas next time. Very, very simple. Works on multiple platforms. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
There is also other engines, you know that, right?
I do know there are other engines. But honestly, like if you're making a simple 2D game, most of the time an engine is going to be overkill, I think. There's a lot that you get from it. Like a big one is, I think, animations. But you can get something like Spine and just integrate that with your own simple engine. You can just control a lot more. I guess it really depends on where you want to spend your time.
What setbacks did you encounter during the project, and do you feel like you learned something from them?
Yeah, I have encountered quite a few, like any project. I think one thing that I'm most excited for right now in terms of Flint games is the next game that I work on, because of how many things I've learned from BlitzKeep. One of the big ones, I think, is that it sort of is pretty different from what I originally planned in a lot of ways. There's a lot more features. Like I said, it was a really simple mobile game originally, and it's literally, like, in terms of just content, it's I think about 10 times the size than the original one was. So the amount of stuff I added and complexity I added eventually made the code base pretty tough to work with. So right now it's in early access, and one of the reasons for that is because there's plenty of bugs, and I'll go in to fix a bug and I'll find, like I wrote in the code, I don't know why this is here. I'm just gonna like remove it, and then of course that broke some random tiny thing somewhere. So I would definitely be a little more deliberate about sticking with my original plan for the game and then moving on instead of updating it so much that it becomes totally different.
If you could go back in time, what will you do different?
Great question. I would say I wouldn't really do anything differently. I think there's plenty of mistakes I made, like I said, but it's all been a good process, a good ride. I enjoy the journey of it. I like to make the game in general. So yeah, I think I would probably not change anything.
If you could advise a new indie game developer, what would you tell
I
him?
would say first thing is don't just make your darling baby idea that you have, and also don't just make something that you think you can make in 3 months, and that's the reason you're making it. Probably start by coming up with a bunch of ideas that you think are cool, and then make quick prototypes in a week for each of them, and then just run around and find people at coffee shops and force them to play your prototypes, and get feedback from everybody that you can possibly do that for, and then make the prototype that is the best.
What do you feel is success for an indie game developer?
I guess for me it would be earning enough to support a small studio. If it was self-sufficient, that would be awesome. And I imagine a lot of indie developers feel similarly, especially because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area where the rent is very high. I would have to earn more than somebody who's living in the middle of the United States. So, yeah, I guess it's mainly that for me. I don't want to have to move away to afford a studio or anything like that. And I don't need to be rich either.
To make other developers learn something, what resources would you recommend?
There is. I guess it depends on what level of experience you have. If you're already pretty experienced, I would say the best resources are to find other indie developers in your area, because they're almost always awesome. And you can get great advice from people like that. And also, they've all done it. They've all done something. So, for example, this was my first Steam release, and I know so many developers around and got a lot of advice from them on what to do, because some of them have released like 5 or 6 Steam games. And then there's other resources. If you're less familiar, I would still connect with local indie developers. But there's a group called Playcrafting that I have taught classes with before, but they specifically are there to teach people game development. They're a really cool group. And there's other groups like that as well, and various resources on the internet too for teaching people how to make games. So I would just start looking around and asking people.
What do you think about the current marketing strategies in the indie game industry?
Well, the funny thing about current marketing strategies in the indie game industry, I think, is that if there is any marketing strategy, then it's probably good and unusual compared to all of the indies in total. I think most indies that I talk to don't have a particular strategy until it's already time to market, which is maybe going back to the advice to give an indie developer. That's something that you should probably not do. I would delay the release of your game just so that you can market it properly, probably. I have now, on a couple of occasions, decided to try to ship under the radar and then market later. And then, of course, everybody ends up finding the game anyway before I'm ready to market, and then I don't have stuff ready to press materials and whatnot, and, there's a lot of missed opportunities. So I would say having a strategy at all is a great idea. And then in terms of the strategies that I've heard of, I think it's hard to say for indies in general, because a lot of it depends on how much money you have. because if you're a really big indie studio, you can market just like a AAA studio to some degree, and that's obviously the best if you can pay for like ad time on TV on the Super Bowl. A lot of people are going to go play your game.
Then you're talking really expensive.
Yeah, you're spending $5 million for a 30-second ad. Actually, I think they pay more. But anyway, yeah, that would be probably silly. I'm just saying that I think indie marketing is not that much different from regular game marketing, which is not that much different from game marketing or not game, movie marketing or other products, in that the more eyeballs you can get, the better. And so probably the lowest cost things, as far as I know, are trying to connect, influencers like YouTubers and Twitch streamers and that kind of stuff with your game, which means really the marketing begins with making something that people want to play and share.
Where do you see the indie game market going in a few years?
That is an amazing question that I don't know the answer to. But I guess I would say that probably it'll continue down the path that it's going now, which is that it'll be more and more oversaturated. Less and less people will be able to support themselves in any way whatsoever. And indies will get closer and closer to AAAs, in that if you find success, you will have massive success. But most likely you won't get anything. That's probably what's going to happen. Which is a bit sad, but it's just the reality. I think people who are successful are going to be people who find the best ways to get noticed, or exclusive platforms, that kind of stuff.
Which other indie game developers, if any, offered you any support or knowledge in creating the game?
Well, in specifically the game development, not that many. In terms of stuff around the game, like asking questions around releasing on Steam, etc. Let's see. So I actually just was emailing Tim Keenan from Misfits Attic, who made A Virus Named Tom and Duskers. Let's see. I asked some questions of... there's an indie group in the Bay Area. A bunch of random people answered. I'm trying to remember who. I honestly don't remember, but I was helping someone else music stuff. So I don't know. There's a lot of people. If someone's in the Bay Area, then it's possible that I've talked to them, and maybe pretty likely. And actually, a lot of my coworkers at Lumosity, I've talked to at random points about my game, and yeah. They're all game developers too. Maybe not indie developers at this moment, but game developers.
That seems like you know a lot of people.
I think if you live in a city and you work in the game industry at all, you're going to meet a lot of people, and then they know other people. If you go to events every once in a while, you'll meet a ton of people. So it's pretty cool. I'm not best friends with everybody, but it's a great community. There's a lot of people who just support each other. Because, like I said, very few are really making bank, so it's important to kind of, use the resources that you have, and people are generally happy to do that.
Is there a AAA studio you would work for if you could?
That is a great question, because there's a lot of angles to that. One is the product, and there's a lot of AAA studios that make games or franchises that I really love. Nintendo's a great example. I've always been really into Nintendo stuff. The idea of working on a Metroid game, which is my favorite franchise, that sounds awesome. But then, as someone who has been in the mainstream game industry, it kind of sucks to work in the mainstream game industry most of the time. In that you're working too many hours, you don't get paid nearly as much as you would as just a regular software engineer or artist or whatever, depending upon the area. And it's often very thankless. And then you have people kind of at the top making choices that are not the best choice for the game itself a lot of the time. They're money-centric. That being said, that's not everybody by any means. But I think unless you work at a studio, you can't ever really know exactly whether that's how it is or not. Some that I've heard that are awesome, Naughty Dog, I've heard is a great place to work. They still work a lot of hours, I've heard, but it's not like a mandated thing, and it's not crazy like the Rockstar stuff you might have just heard about with 100-hour weeks. In terms of local San Francisco places, I can't even think of any, honestly, that I've heard are great to work for. They're all a little... It's tough working in the AAA game industry, man. So, yeah, that's my answer. That's why I'm at Lumosity. It's an awesome place to work, and I'm still working on games, but it has a really good work-life balance.
Well, I don't want to work 100-hour weeks anyways.
Right? I mean, no way.
I would only work and sleep. That's not me. Very not me. I would wish my holiday started every day.
Yeah. Like I have some friends who are working at Telltale, and like a similar thing that they weren't working quite as much as Rockstar, but then all of a sudden everybody's laid off, and that's the game industry, man.
Yeah, not fair.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can find new job pretty easily.
Yeah, and there's a big push to make a union for game developers to try to help increase the wages and the working conditions. So I hope that happens.
Yeah, me too. Because 100-hour weeks are not healthy for humans.
No, and it's like you can't even do good work when you're working. It's not even possible. So why do it? I don't know.
Yeah, better have good work for 40 to 50 hours per week than bad work for 100.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you'll make a lot more mistakes, I think.
I agree. Which game do you wish you have ever worked on?
Which game? Sorry, what was that?
The question is, which game do you wish you have ever worked on?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the sound cut out for a second. Which game do I wish that I worked on? I guess I would just call out a Metroid game. If we're talking just sort of fun, aspirational stuff, working on a Metroid game would be great. Or you know what? A game that I loved recently and seems like a cool little team is Hollow Knight by Team Cherry, which they're in Australia. I don't know those guys at all. I've never talked, but I will say that game is impressive, and they seem to have figured out how to kind of filter out the noise of all of the cool stuff they could make and instead focus on core mechanics and making compromises to make a really great game. So I would have loved to be a fly on the wall for that.
Did you have any gaming education in school, or did you learn the whole development process on your own?
Well, when I was in school, the game development majors that exist now in college weren't around, so I didn't have anything like that, and I'm not sure if I would have done it anyway. Because like I said, I was just sort of self-taught from an early age and kept doing it, so I got a lot of practice that way, even before I was in high school. So mostly taught it to myself. I did take lots of computer science classes because that was my major in college. And I would say I definitely got better programming fundamentals from doing that. But that wasn't specifically game development.
Where did you grow up?
I was born in San Francisco, California, in the U.S., but I moved very early to the East Coast of the United States. Lived in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Maine.
That's a lot of places.
Yeah, my parents like to move a lot.
Always blame the parents. That's what I do when
definitely.
things went wrong. It's my mom's fault. She did it.
Yep.
What is your favorite video game of all time?
Oh, usually I say Super. that is just almost a perfect game. And I think I really loved... I was 17 when it came out, Conker's Bad Fur Day, because it was horribly vulgar and silly, and also a good game. So I usually call that one out too. But yeah, these days of more favorite games, I would call out Hollow Knight again. That was one of the more favorite games I've ever played recently.
Well, there's the next question. What is your favorite video game of this year and why?
Oh, look at that. Well, Hollow Knight wasn't this year, so I'll call something else out. This year. Everything I'm thinking of came out a while ago. Like, I've been playing lots of Smash Bros. Started playing Left 4 Dead again, Towerfall, all old games. So I don't even know the answer. I would have to take a second to look at what came out this year. But there's probably something I played that I really liked. I played a good amount of Fortnite. And I think it's a great game and well done, but I stopped playing because I was tired of, like, 11-year-olds killing me over and over again.
Yeah, my brother is 12. He plays Fortnite as well.
And I'm sure he could kill me, like, a whole lot. I'm not that good.
I have no idea. I've never ever played Fortnite. I was like,
It's
if my
pretty
brother
fun.
plays it, then his friends probably play it, then probably the whole community is about his age. I'm not gonna try it.
Yeah, it really, the majority of people, if you go in and you're listening to the microphones, they're like 12. Yeah, definitely. But if you're interested in game development and game design, I would absolutely play that game because I would say it is really a masterclass of game design and compelling players to do things. There is a lot to interest you. It's very well done in that way.
That was my final question. Do you have other things you want to say?
I don't think so. This has been a great interview, though. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I guess go play BlitzKeep Unleashed, people listening.
Yeah, for all the people that are listening, all the links to social media and the game's Steam page and everything will all be in the description below, so you can just click there.
Awesome.
Awesome.